When Parappa the Rapper got its North American release on the PlayStation in 1997, it really stood out. Here was this game with an incredibly unique art style and graphical style, featuring equally unique for its time rhythm-based gameplay. Sure, it's very short, but another thing that made it stand out was its price. It was only $40. This was a bit before the system started to see a lot of budget titles, and if you compare its price tag to the at the time average PS1 game price of around $50 to $55, or the even higher prices you'd see with N64 games, you can see how it may have given people more of an incentive to take a gamble and give it a try. Even if it wasn't nearly as great of a deal as Katamari Damacy would be when it launched for the PS2 at $20 in 2004. Still, by the time I got Parappa at a Toys R Us in 1999, it was already down to $10. I, being a kid who loved the cartoony animal-starring platformers of the era, such as Crash Bandicoot and Gex, saw the commercials, not knowing what kind of game it was, and was just like, cool, another game like the ones I love, starring an awesome dog. I'll admit, I didn't know what a rapper was. So I took the game home, initially loving it for its cutscenes, and then the gameplay started. At that point, I was confused. You don't get to move Parappa around, you just press button prompts that appear on screen? What even is this? I initially hated it, but I kept going back because of the cutscenes. Again, I loved that aspect since they were kinda like something from a 90s era Cartoon Network show, and I wanted to see what would happen next. First, I beat the initial 3 stages on easy mode, which is as far as it will let you go at that setting. Then, after getting the hang of it, I beat the game itself on normal mode. My opinion had completely changed. I didn't hate the game anymore, I thought it was great, and I could not get the Gotta Believe song out of my head. And hey, I owe Parappa for ingraining the PlayStation button layout into my subconscious, cause they were not something I had in my muscle memory before playing it. So that's just my own experience with the game, and why it holds a special place in my heart. In fact, it holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. It's a fairly beloved game, as are its spin-off, Jammer Lammy, and maybe to a lesser extent its sequel, Parappa 2. And when a game captures the hearts of people like this, it's inevitable that some imitators will come along and try to give their own spin on the subject. On the PS1, there was Bust-A-Groove 1 and 2. They take the rhythm-based gameplay of Parappa and mix it with the competitive, character-focused, one-on-one nature of a fighting game, which makes them stand out on their own. They are worth trying if you like the genre. Later, on PS2, there would be Gitaroo Man, which has a very similar structure to Parappa, and even has a unique art style that makes it hard not to compare. Still, the way you play your instrument is completely different than the way you rap in Parappa, so at least they try to do something different in that regard. Again, this one is a recommend if you like music games. But before either of those series, a far bigger imitator of Parappa existed, but on a Sega system, and only in Japan. This game feels so much like Parappa, in fact, that you might even go as far as calling it a ripoff. The game in question is Jung Rhythm for the Sega Saturn. Jung Rhythm came out in late 1997, about a year after Parappa's Japanese release. In it, you play as Jung, a school-aged girl who is obsessed with a pop star named Mr. Chorking. This might seem like an intentionally odd and random name to someone outside of Japan, but I am fairly certain it was meant to be a parody of Japanese pop rock band Mr. Children. Anyway, as the story mode starts, you are having a dream where your beloved Mr. Chorking saves your life, and then you wake up and need to get ready for school. This brings you to the first level, which takes place in the kitchen as you eat your mom's breakfast. Oh, so first of all, look at how your mom is introduced. Okay, now look at how a level in Parappa is introduced.
Welcome to the Fruits Dojo.
Yeah, kind of a big similarity, and we're just getting started. The gameplay has you going back and forth between you and another character singing. They sing their lines as you see the inputs, and then you repeat it. If your timing and style is right, a meter on the side goes up. If it's not so good, the meter goes down. Yep, this is basically the exact same gameplay of Parappa. To add to this first stage takes place in a kitchen as the other character prepares food, which is extremely similar to the Cheep Cheep Chicken stage from Parappa. The only difference being that you aren't making the food yourself, but simply eating it. Actually, that brings me to another thing that's kind of weird about this stage. You aren't singing the same lines as your mom, but eating in rhythm with them. So I guess that's at least something you didn't see in the game this is imitating. Though it is kind of weird that they started with this, since you do actually sing in the later levels. So after you play through the first level, which is fairly easy, you're given a rating screen. If you get 70% or higher on your overall score, you can pass. If you get less than that, well, you gotta try again. In Parappa, you can pass a stage as long as you're rapping at least the good level when you reach the end of the song. So this is definitely more strict than that game. Still, the first level is at least fairly easy, so you will probably pass that one on your first try if you're familiar with this type of game. In the second level, things get a bit trickier. You're dancing with a mean girl from your school named Dorian, and as I alluded to before, you do actually sing in this stage. Actually, this song's pretty catchy, and I kept hearing it in my head days after playing it. One thing I do kind of like in this one is how if you make a mistake, she slaps you. Anyway, this level gave me a lot of trouble when I played the game emulated, but when I played it on original hardware, I passed it on my first try whenever I played it. With both methods of playing, I was on the same HD TV, so I'm not sure if this was a delay thing. Maybe I'd just gone the song's tempo down by that point. Now, the third level is where I had trouble regardless of how I played it. In this stage, you're practicing art with Picasso, I guess. That's what he says his name is. This stage has you very quickly pressing a single input, similar to the third stage in Parappa where you're rapping with Prince Fleaswallow. However, something about it is a lot more difficult than that stage. This might have something to do with the fact that when the verse you are repeating is longer than one bar, it doesn't let you see the second bar ahead of time. It just pops up when you get there. Parappa did a much better job of preparing you for this. Now, I am very familiar with Parappa since I've had it since I was a kid, so that might have something to do with it, but I don't know. When I played Jammer Lammy and Parappa 2 for the first time at an older age, I never had this much trouble with any level in those games on my first try. Still, I imagine I would be able to pass this stage once I really got its rhythm down, but as it is, I decided to count my losses and call it quits.
才能ないかも、ピカソ。
嘘。So, one thing Jung Rhythm does differently from Parappa is that D-pad inputs are used in the songs. Parappa uses the PS1's 4 face buttons along with L and R1. Jung Rhythm uses the Saturn's bottom 3 face buttons in addition to the D-pad, so I guess that makes it just slightly more complex. Still, I will say, something specifically about the Saturn's D-pad doesn't feel right for this. Maybe that's just because I'm so used to Parappa though. Another area where you could say this game one-ups Parappa is that it has a 2-player mode. Now, Jammer Lammy would eventually come along with a great 2-player mode where you can play as both Lammy and Parappa, but that was a full 2 years after this game. So good on the makers of Jung Rhythm for realizing that's something people playing a rhythm game would want. I mean, it definitely gives you a big reason to keep playing. And one more thing I do want to mention is that I did really dig this game's whole vibe and art style. Yeah, it's going for basically the same alternative art thing that Parappa does, minus the paper cutout look, but, you know, they did a pretty good job. Jung herself has a great look and is a fairly likable character. Oh, and the last thing I absolutely have to mention, this game has an English translation patch. Yep, you can play it with fully subbed cutscenes and lyrics during gameplay. Well, good luck actually reading those lyrics while you're playing, but it's still awesome nonetheless. Now, before trying it, keep in mind that this game is not as good as Parappa. Again, I found the D-pad inputs to feel kind of unnatural, and it felt harder to get the tempo down than similar games. And while I do like the game's look and its weird characters, it's still not quite as well done or memorable as Rodney Allen Greenblatt's amazing art for the Parappa universe. And the music, while somewhat catchy, isn't quite at the same level either. But hey, if you're a big Parappa fan and wish there was something exactly like it from the same era, well, there is, and this is it. It's definitely worth giving a try. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to see more like it in the future, including a much larger scale video covering even more gaming ripoffs. Fans of the channel may also want to consider supporting it on Patreon or as a YouTube member for early access footage, the chance to pick games for review, and more. Well, with that said, I guess it's time to close this thing out. As always, thanks for watching The Legend of Games.